Well, because of the width and travel restrictions, you stick to a room. So with the student ones, it's the full student room plus an ensuite, and everything is fitted out internally. The only thing that comes in afterwards is the duvet, the pillow, and the chair. So everything that's fixed is delivered in the module. And one thing we're thinking about is actually how can we deliver the duvet, the pillow, and the chair in a way that means it's not damaged when it's craned. Well, that presents certain human rights difficulties. So we're not thinking about a student, but because you've got to carry all that stuff up the set of stairs, because you usually try not to damage the lift, and the same in build to rent. So how can we get the furniture in safely and with the minimum of waste? Because also the amount of waste that's used to package all of that, which then has to be carted away. So you get vans carting, 20% of waste to the building, and then another set of vans carting the 20% of waste away again. So how we can do all that in the factory is something that we're investigating.
Where do Vision manufacture?
Bedfordshire. And elements are in Telford. So.
Are you recruiting different people with HTA now in terms of your experiences, and you see the agenda changing of a skill set, just to join the conversation together, I suppose, in terms of the people you're recruiting into?
Well, I suppose that we have been we've been lucky, I suppose, insofar as a lot of his work is being done with client and manufacturer around the table from the very beginning. Okay. So it's not like a traditional design process where you have to go through a process of finding the right team. So we usually start with the right team. Okay. So we don't feel as though we have to know everything about the manufacturer. Right. By talking to the manufacturer and getting them to comment on our work as we go, we learn enough about them. Yes. So we can do our job and they can do their job. We don't both have to do each other's job. So your point about us designing the site process, we don't feel we have to design the site process. The manufacturer is much better than us at designing the site process. So we just have to make sure that the bits we're designing for them or with them are capable of working through that site process. So we feel we've got plenty to learn from the manufacturers.
Which I think is your point about the feedback loop, isn't it?
Yeah. I suppose we get that feedback loop, but we don't get the feedback loop from the people who are really living in them. Although we visit the hotel at the beginning, we visit that a lot, and the feedback from that is very positive. So there are no 5 years on from completion. There are no defects. I had somebody in a session like this ask me, what do we do about defects? And I had to think for a moment, because we really haven't had, we don't have really a site defects process, because the stuff comes to site and it's already been checked before it left the factory. So we're not going to go into the modules and check them, because they've already been checked. In fact, we're not really allowed into the modules because nobody else is either. Because the last thing you want is people bumping around in there, scratching stuff before it's handed over. RPI is as normal. It's not less or more.
Are the manufacturers responsible for the box and everything inside it, and then you're responsible for everything outside the box?
We don't. Oh, we design the buildings, so our normal PI covers us. There's the structural engineer who engineers the building. So all the volumetric work is engineered. We're the designers of the buildings, so our PI covers us. We feel we're responsible. We still design the bathrooms and we design, the bits, but they're manufactured in the factory. The factory, with the student accommodation, we think we've figured out the best bathroom. So we don't need to redesign that the next time. But with, say, private, the build-to-rent accommodation, the bathrooms are designed specifically for each client, because different clients have a different view on what their market is, who they're aiming for with their particular system. And it's been quite interesting actually working with different build-to-rent clients, because they have a remarkably different view on what their market is, and unlike say normal housing, where Actually, a lot of our clients don't think too hard about who it is who's going to occupy the housing. It's just housing. But for build-to-rent people who are going to be reselling the building every year, then it's really important to them.
Question, just wondering on the student accommodation, on the hotel, was it volumetric plant as well? Prefabbed and prefabbed, or how they integrate services within that?
The services tend to stack. So you've got risers that rise up, and then on the end of every module. So everything is accessible from the corridor side. So all the plant that's specific to the module or room goes in there, so that's all done offsite. But then the central plant is in the plant room in the basement. That's.
One of things that if you've got a tall building, 36 floors, you might start, if you're doing volumetric, you might start by putting in plants at 3 levels or 5 levels. So you can have a volumetric system where one room or a module is a plant room. Does plant that, or a modularised riser, so it's a plant room riser.
Yeah. I'd say we've got to this stage of having prefabricated systems in each of the rooms, but not particularly to the stage of having prefabricated plant for the whole buildings.
More questions? Yes. The mention of that it's not an issue in terms of, say, the IP, is how you actually solve the height constraint. So I think the early buildings were actually cold rolled, if I'm correct.
Yeah, these are hot rolled. Yeah. So there's no IP in there.
But does that allow you to jump from, say, 20 to 36 in the last slide?
It was a combination of the structural system is different in the taller version. Yeah, but it is all hot rolled because I think you are limited with cold rolled, and you end up with quite a lot of elements in the walls. So you end up being more restricted about where you can put openings and how flexible the factory can be. I mean, you can get a very strong and light module, but it does mean you've got to have lots of cross bracing, which just restricts. So it makes it very difficult to have multi-room buildings. So where you've got doors or wide openings, or even have open-sided modules. Yeah.
The structural principle is at the core provides the wind brace.
Yes.
Yeah, and the modules then plug on, isn't it?
Yes. So that does impose limitations on the distance you can get away from the core before you need another core. But again, that's something that we're fairly, we understand pretty well at this stage. So that's one of the first things we look at now with the design, how you distribute the cores around the building to provide that kind of stability.
More questions? Or you?
I was going to ask Rory, in terms of the way that HT work with design, especially incorporating BIM into offsite construction, and how easy was it, even though you're multidisciplinary, to have that sort of fully collaborative elements in terms of your BIM, in terms of shared working platforms and interoperability? Because we're finding as a smaller practice for being multidisciplinary, who are working with smaller house builders, it's really sort of teaching them the benefits of it, and looking to almost sort of change the way that we work with consultants to ensure that we sort of deliver a level of service and how easy it was to use.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody is still learning. I think in that particular project where the manufacturer is using BIM to drive, that's because they invested heavily in their systems relatively recently. So they've come in at a high level, if you like. And what you do have is you have quite a lot of differences in the manufacturers about the systems that they use. So some have very modern, up-to-date systems that can accept Revit files or IFC files, but others have something which is much akin to AutoCAD. So when you're working with a high level of prefabrication, that can drive the sort of the digital process, but not everybody is there or anything like it. And it tends to be actually the more mature the organization is, the more likely they are to have an older system which is completely embedded and very hard for them to change, whereas some of the smaller organizations are more flexible. I mean, we went to see Legal & General's factory, and they're fully intent on using a Revit model with a plug-in to drive the factory in quite an interesting way. Yeah.
Another one? Are your clients using the output from the BIM models to maintain? Not so far we're aware. We are going to do some work with one of the build-to-rent clients on exactly this. Are we providing, or can we provide the right level of information in the BIM model to enable them to do so, or can they then extract from the model the information they need to run? Because they also already have a bunch of management software tools which they don't want to throw away, because that enables them to benchmark their buildings against each other. So they're constantly checking, is this building bringing in as much income as another similar building in some other country? So it won't be a case of them ditching what they do and taking on a BIM tool to manage using our models. It'll be more a case of how can we build interfaces between our models and their tools. But we won't do that. I mean, obviously, they have software companies who will do that for them.
Thinking about Ken's point and your point about feedback, it'd be great.
Yeah.
If
Yes.
you start getting that feedback into your BIM.
Yeah, and we're really keen to have that conversation with them, because that gives us a way, an in, if you like, into their management systems, which we hope will tell us something about how they run the buildings and give us feedback on where things have gone well or badly.
You can continue to improve going forward.
Yeah.
But it's also going to drive the extra percentage points to reduce that 30 to 33. The target is about not just the design and the construction, but by using the BIM model for the maintenance and the operation of the buildings. That's where the extra numbers will drop. And that's what we're driving at. You see, the hospital we're doing in the West Midlands, the key to that is actually the data in the BIM model. It's not the actual Revit model, it's not the 3D information.
Yeah.
It's the data that goes with it, which then the maintenance team will have ready to hand, and that's where we'll actually be able to reduce the cost. So overall, whole life.
Yeah, and I suspect that by default our models won't have all that data or anything like it, because we would tend to have a generic type of something and then a specification that says what that thing is, rather than necessarily populating every part of the BIM model evenly with all that data.
But then NDS are beginning to develop the BIM library to allow architects to do that type of thing for them.
Yeah. So I think we're still some way away. You can see how all the pieces of the puzzle are there, but I wouldn't say they're all joined up yet.
Pass on a small amount of information very quickly and then ask Rory a question, if I may. First of all, I had a client recently in Manchester who said they want to build a 36-storey building using modular construction. Can I do it structurally? So I phoned Caledonian, as it happened, and I asked their structural engineer what they do. And they said, well, first of all, you start off, as you rightly said, by using a solid concrete core as your shear, your wind bracing and such like, and that is your anchor. Then imagine a conventional steel frame. Now take all of that steel tonnage and divide it out into your modular boxes. You don't have to change the size of your modular boxes, you just have to make sure you distribute the steel appropriately. So the first 10 boxes will have a much stronger steel frame, the middle 10 less strong, and the top 10 just like your conventional boxes, which I thought was very interesting. But going up to that height, there's another issue, and it's the question I want to put to you, Rory. I found early on that even though I'd been using illustrations of tower cranes lifting these boxes into position, the reality is that these boxes generally are quite heavy, and a tower crane, even a big beast in a static position at 30 meters extension, lifting 11 tons, is going to crumple. So these things are lifted by mobile cranes. Now I know they can go up some height, but at the moment I've been designing my buildings to go up to about 24 stories or so on the basis that this is a massive beast of a mobile crane. How are you going to lift those boxes into place on your 35-story buildings?
Well, we're using fixed cranes to lift them on the sites that we're The site for that one is using a fixed crane.
Is it indeed?
Yeah, I think what you have to do is you have to get the crane close enough to where, so if you've got a very tight site, or a very close, you can get the crane close enough to the delivery point and then the drop-off point, so you're not using the full length of the boom.
What's the maximum sort of weight of a box that you're going to lift though?
20 tons.
Really? You can lift
Yeah.
20 tons?
Yeah. But on that site, there'll be less than 20 tons. But on the other side, the build to rent site, we think we're going to hit 20 tons. But that one has the biggest cranes you can get, the biggest fixed cranes you can get, and there are not that many of them. So you're absolutely right. The sort of crane availability for heavy loads might become a driving factor in some of your decisions. So back to your question about how you decide, how you make decisions about all of this, there's quite a lot of thinking to be done, but the designers are not going to do all that thinking. We need manufacturers and other people involved to inform us.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So sign of success will be seeing more heavy cranes in the industry.
You'll see fewer of them, but heavier versions. But somebody mentioned drones. So what we need are drones that can lift 20 tons, because then we can get away from this whole road 4.5-5 meter business. Just Chinooks. Big Chinooks. Yeah.
At that point, I think we'll stop the questions. If you want to have a look around the Z-Pod, Bill Dunce has gone across to the Z-Pod, and I can walk you across there now. But I hope you've had a really good day today. I hope it's been successful in terms of learning new ideas. I know we've had some great speakers throughout the day, each one providing a different perspective. So thank you for coming. If you've got any feedback, please fill in your feedback forms. If you want to have a look around the innovation part, please do. And I can take you across to kind of start that journey in terms of the Z-Pod. So thank you very much for coming.
Okay.